we assume, but there's cobblestone right outside the...
but not leading up. Oh.
Because remember when they were calling him back with the big bullhorn thing and the violin, he walked up and then he climbed up the wall?
That's coming up later.
Damn it.
Shooting out of order.
Okay, I've got another one. Yeah, no shit. Golly.
All right, insert cut.
Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here? Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Here are your hosts, Alan Sanders and Walt Murray.
Hey, welcome back, everyone, to The Wilder Ride, where we are getting wilder by the minute, a podcast where we are breaking down and celebrating the Gene Wilder film, Young Frankenstein, one glory, glory, hallelujah minute at a time. I'm Alan Sanders, I'm your host.
I'm Walt Murray, your co-host.
And joining us once again, a guy who knows all about podcasting and analyzing movies 1 minute at a time, we've got Pete Mummert from the Indiana Jones Minute. Welcome, Pete.
Thanks. Hey.
So good to have you back here and joining us for this.
Nice to be here.
You guys have been dealing with color and high-end special effects and chases. Is it nice to kind of go a little nostalgic and kind of in the Wayback Machine to a black and white era?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a real sucker for black and white, so I think this is great.
Let me ask you this question, because we had earlier in the run of this movie, as we were discussing it 1 minute at a time, our worry was this was the movie that was sort of out when we were either really young or certainly the movie that maybe our parents saw and then we saw maybe on TV rather than in the theater. And we worried that the modern audience, let's say in the last, like the 15, 20-year-olds of today, 30-year-olds even, would they even bother to watch a black and white film? What are your thoughts, Pete?
Well, it's hard for me to gauge that because where I live in San Francisco, we have a lot of giant revival series at we've got a couple of big theaters, the Castro Theater and the Paramount Theater, where they show, these huge festivals where they're all 40s film noirs or silent films from the 20s. And, they'll get 1,500, 2,000 people at each movie. And it feels like people love these old films once they get into, and once they get into them, it just, the enthusiasm seems to grow and grow into the point where you have lines around the block getting in. And I think there's a lot of people, especially with TCM, Turner Classic Movies too. I think a lot of people are a lot more familiar with a lot of these movies, even though this isn't, a classic black and white movie. But I think there's enough out there that people have been exposed to them more than I worried they would be.
Yeah, some of my favorite movies are in black and white, and a lot of times in this movie, you get kind of the same feel that I get when I'm watching 12 Angry Men, which was an awesome, awesome movie that really could not be remade today. I don't think you could do that one just because
you say that, but HBO had a version out that had George C. Scott in it, and it was updated, and I thought it was fantastic.
I'll have to go back and look at that.
I was surprised because they had to update it. They couldn't, because in the original 12 Angry Men, they were making fun of a black kid, right? Not making fun of, but they were trying to pin it all on a black kid. And I think they updated it because one of the racists, which was a nice twist in the HBO one, was sort of a Louis Farrakhan, kind of that member of Islam who started talking about, those Latinos, they'll lie about everything. And so they switched it around. So you have a black guy in the HBO one playing sort of that racist role, and the kid who we're supposedly the jury's talking about is Latino.
If there is a reasonable doubt, you must bring me a verdict of not guilty.
The charge, murder in the first.
The kid you just decided is not guilty was seen ramming that thing into his father.
An open and shut case. Or is it?
Hey, what is this?
Now it's up to 12 men to decide the fate of the accused and for one man to stand alone in the ultimate battle for the truth.
You want the boy to die for your own personal reason.
Courtney P. Vance, Ozzie Davis, George C. Scott, Armin Mueller-Stahl, Dorian Harewood, James Gandolfini, Tony Danza, Jack Lemmon, Hume Cronin, Michael T. Williamson, Edward James Olmos, William Peterson, directed by William Friedkin. 12 Angry Men.
So I thought it was an interesting update, and it still worked, and George C. Scott, bam, was fantastic.
Well, George C. Scott, he's awesome, so he would make any movie great. So I'll have to go back and watch that.
But there is something about the black and white in and of itself that gives that sort of I don't know. I grew up with my mom watching a lot of the Sam Spade film noir kind of movies, and I always got that sense with the harsh shadows and the light that can just play off those really dark, bleak backgrounds. And I've always kind of liked that. I always thought it was kind of a cool look.
Yeah, and I think movies now, it's harder and harder to get that feel. You know, the more crisp and intense everything gets. I mean, you catch every pimple and scratch on everybody's face in every scene, where before they really had to act and they really had to emote a lot stronger, and you could do some of those things with lighting and other tricks to convey emotion, and you just don't have that as much anymore.
Well, one of the things I like is this movie has a very timeless feel. Like, it seems like almost any movie you watch from the 70s, you can watch a minute and a half of the movie and you know immediately, oh, that's a movie from the 70s. And I think because it's in black and white, this movie feels like it could be from almost any era. Like, it feels like it'd be back from almost the source period to any time up to the present. And I don't think that would have been possible if it weren't black and white.
You know, we've actually mentioned that a few times. This movie gives that, because of the way it was shot and because of the way they chose black and white, it all of a sudden does have a sort of timeless feel. It becomes almost like a classic. You don't see like a Dodge Dart running around in the background, or a Pinto or something that kind of, even the cars they used. Because we know we're in 1974, but even when the cars show up, they're all old cars. Right. They're all of the era of the 30s to make us feel like, wow, this is a film that survived for 70 or 80 years. Well, I guess now when you think about it, like, we think it might have been released in the 30s.
Yeah, it has that feel.
Yeah.
Well, and Pete, y'all are doing a movie series that's set in the 1940s, but is in color.
Right.
Right.
30s until the last one.
Yeah, right. Well, that's true. Late 30s. So you're headed towards World War II. And so World War II era.
It depends what country you're in.
It depends on what country. So anyway, it's set before I was born. But it is in color. So, yeah, but they do have a lot of strong emotion conveyed in Raiders and some of the others. When you look at these two movies, obviously set, about 10, the setting, we feel like we're back in the 1930s. Your movies are late 30s, early 40s. How do you find the two in the way that they're set and the way that they're shot to convey some of those this kind of timeless feelings that you get when you watch them? Because, when you're watching Raiders, you do feel like you're back in 1939, and you do feel like he's actually fighting the Nazis. But, obviously it's shot in color. Do you kind of pick up on some of those nuances here?
Yeah, this feels more like it was filmed in the 30s. And I think those feel more like they're set in the 30s with a little more modern sensibility. I feel like this kind of goes a different direction with it.
That's how I would pick it. They do a good job of making you realize you've traveled to the 30s, but you're filming with the most current techniques and everything of the current day. Right. It doesn't feel like it was shot in 36 or 38. Where this specifically, if you remember, one of the early directions for the cinematographer was, this is the look we're going for. We want it to look like this. We purposely are going to do a lot of long shots and master shots, and we're not going to do a lot of close-ups. We're not going to do a lot of punching in. So it has that, and which is weird because an audience of today still likes it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although I'm curious if people, understand like the lens irising, or if, maybe that's become such a cliche anyway, or, people are like, oh, yeah, I recognize that.
No, I don't think they do.
I think you're giving the audience a little bit more credit.
No, because, and I'm just, funny, we're not even getting into the minute yet, but I'm just having this great conversation here because if you remember some of the group shots we had where they were playing the charades game and they were having other things going on, a modern take on a movie today, you would have never had all four people doing four things all at the same time, all on the screen, and never once cut to what they're individually doing. It's almost like we're watching a play. And I love that. Oh, yeah. I love the camera just sits there and says, watch. And if you didn't catch it, come back and watch it again.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm just even thinking of the movies that I've seen this summer so far. And they're very quick takes. You don't have too many scenes where there are multiple actors on the scene at once, allowing a scene to play out like you have here.
Well, let's go ahead and dive into this minute while we're here. We've had a good opening discussion about old films and new films and the fact that this is still a 1974 film set to look like somewhere in the 30s. And we are at minute number 92, where we're going to start with Dr. Frankenstein saying, I suppose you're right. Again, and we're going to end with Elizabeth singing a line from the Battle Hymn of the Republic, singing Glory, Glory, Hallelujah. So let's start off. They're still having the conversation here, and it's not going Freddy's way. At the very beginning, you get the sense that, well, She's convinced him, just give it a few more days, just let's do this right. Let's do it right. And he's like, I suppose you're right. And we talked about that a little bit yesterday. And if she says, of course I am here. What I love is when she finally says, okay, just a little kiss goodnight, darling. And he does that real slow reach in, and you see just as his mouth is starting to widen.
No tongues.
No tongues.
And I feel like that little conversation, I suppose you're right. I feel like if they end up getting married, he's going to spend the rest of his life calling her mummy or mother. But then I started thinking, like, is that actually what he needs? Is she the only thing that's kind of keeping him grounded in sanity right now? And if she's not there, does he become full on Dr. Frankenstein creating a monster? Is she kind of the part of society that's holding him back?
I don't know.
I kind of get the sense that when the movie starts, he doesn't know what he needs or what he wants. But as we watch his progression, he embraces who he is. He embraces that he is Dr. Frankenstein. And as he moves into that role, I think he becomes a bit stronger person and needs her less. And maybe that's a little bit of what he realizes here is that he doesn't need to be bossed around and have somebody who's leading him around by the nose all the time.
Do you realize, and maybe you don't because I've got the script and you don't, this whole thing after the no tongues, starting with the no tongues, completely improv as well.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Not at all was this conceived of the no tongues. And after the kiss, what's supposed to happen is she doesn't even kiss him. Freddy starts to kiss, and she instead offers her cheek. Freddy then grumbles good night, and Elizabeth says, "That's my good boy." And as he leaves, she blows him a kiss and closes the door. We don't get any of this here. What we get here is a wonderful little play between the two of them after the word no tongues, and they have this little dialogue interchange. It took me a second to realize, why is he muttering? Oh, he's not going to use his tongue.
Oh, that's great. I didn't catch that.
That's funny.
That's why he's muttering all of these lines, because she's like, no tongues. So if you go back and listen, as he's trying to say word.
Good night, darling. Good night, sweetheart. I love you. You love me? I love you, honey. Sweet dreams, darling. Good night, don't let the bed bugs bite.
He's trying to say words without his tongue. You love me?
Funny.
I love you. You love me a lot? I love you a lot.
That is hilarious. I've never caught that.
I didn't catch that either.
Really? This is your favorite film, Walt?
I'm just not that smart.
That's why we do this 1 minute at a time.
That's right. And everybody in the audience is like, what an idiot. Everybody knew that.
You know what? No. Poll question. How many people knew why he was muttering? So let me ask you this, without me telling you that. Pete, why did you think he was muttering the rest of the scene? Do you think he was just off?
See, I think he's turning. I thought it was a sign that he's turning into the monster because he starts He kind of starts grunting too. He goes,
"That's funny,"
and is like without, he's basically turning into the monster that he's created. And I thought that was just sort of a transition.
Oh, I could see where you'd see that. There's no doubt about that. There's some of that similarity because he isn't using his tongue to speak to her at this point. What did you think?
I just thought he was hacked off, and he was being kind of passive-aggressive.
And maybe that's just because I'm taking my modern take. Do we do this? Do we always kind of put ourselves in the main character, say, what would we do if we were there?
Definitely.
Because I suddenly saw, I would do that.
Yeah.
If my wife if my wife chopped me off at the knees, I'd be like, okay, fine, you want to
Yeah.
I'm basically I thought initially he was talking through gritted teeth.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it took me looking at this very closely and realizing, because when she says no tongues, and if you see very quickly, it's hard to tell. He even waggles his tongue in his mouth for a second.
I noticed that.
And then he kind of bites down and he's like, okay, fine, no tongues.
And you can see that he's kind of emotionally shutting down here. And he kind of raises his eyebrows. He's flippantly. And he's kind of
he crawls out.
On his knees. He's lumbering out of the room. So I think it gives Pete's theory a little bit of validity too.
Well, maybe we're all a little bit right. Because I think he is a little upset.
Oh, I think he's...
And I think the passive-aggressive is the fact, okay, no tongues, fine, I'm going to talk to you with no tongues.
Yeah.
And the fact is, it does all of a sudden draw an illusion that all of a sudden you could say, it's a little bit like how his monster sounds.
Well, and there has to be, in his mind, a sense that I've got this one very attractive woman who's very into me and very interested in me. And then I've got Elizabeth, who I'm into, and she has very little real interest in me whatsoever. There's got to be some frustration building in his mind over that as well. So
yes. In fact, the script then calls for the following to take place, which I'm so glad it doesn't. But I will reserve that. You guys have to. You guys tell me if we should have had this scene. As Dr. Frankenstein leaves, he passes Inga, who opens her door, and she's wearing a flimsy nightgown. Inga says, "Why, Doctor, is anything the matter?" Freddy, "Just passing. Thought I'd say goodnight." "What's wrong, Doctor? You seem lonely." No, not lonely. Just, I feel the need of a good, intellectual discussion. Would you like to come in and talk a little? I wouldn't want to keep you up. Oh, you wouldn't be keeping me up. Freddy, well, perhaps for just a few minutes. And they enter Inga's room. End scene. Should we have had that or no? Well, I'm going to put a long pause here.
Yeah, I don't think it necessarily adds anything we don't already have in the movie. But I don't dislike it.
No, I'm the same way. I
love how they say, well, I wouldn't want to do anything, but I would be in for a good intellectual discussion.
Yeah.
Well, and
which, of course, you wouldn't know that what that meant.
I was going to say, they've already cut the other intellectual
because they cut the
out.
other scene.
Yeah, so there would be, but I mean, you'd know what he was talking about. I think it's one of those that it doesn't push the ball down the field at all, because we already know what's going on there. We already know what's going on in that relationship. We know that he's frustrated with Elizabeth, and that relationship's kind of a cold fish relationship. So I don't know that it really adds anything to the movie. I don't know that it would have made the movie any less by having it in. But I can see why they didn't include it.
Another thing that we're going to get here, and I'm not cutting out the conversation at all, because I do want to keep with this. I do find it interesting. The very next scene is a scene we've already talked about, and that shows how the script in the editing room became all out of order, because this is when we're supposed to go to the inspector talking about having a riot, and a riot is a good thing to have. So it's interesting that instead of going to that, they go straight to her, which would be the following scene, Elizabeth in her bedroom, just finishing brushing her hair, humming quietly to herself.
He has loosed the fateful lightning of his terrible swift sword. His truth is marching and
And she's not just humming, she's getting full on Broadway here
right.
with Glory, Glory, Hallelujah, a line from the Battle Hymn of the Republic. So I have to ask this question. Why that song? Why the Battle Hymn of the Republic? And all I had somewhere scrawled in a note that I've lost since is that the rights had gone out and it was considered part of the public domain. But is there any other reason why you would pick that song? I'm not really familiar. Oh, you do? Pete, what?
Yeah. I thought it was fascinating because the original the Battle Hymn of the Republic was originally based on a Civil War marching song called John Brown's Body. And the lyrics are mostly variations on the fact that John Brown is dead and he's in his grave, but this other guy named John Brown shows up, and basically the original John Brown's soul comes back marching in the new John Brown's body.
Wow.
That's interesting.
So I think I don't know. I'm assuming that was intentional. It's almost like, it mirrors the movie.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why we bring on the guests that we bring on to make up for the lack of planning and knowledge we bring to this podcast day in and day out.
That's exactly right.
That's fantastic. That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Because I knew I had read somewhere that the license had run out or that it was in the public domain and so they could use it. But I had no idea of the history of the Battle Hymn of the Republic. And that is really, really cool. The sense of something coming back from the dead.
Uh-huh.
And she's about she's about to have somebody who's supposedly dead about to show up. So it makes perfect timing.
Yes, she is.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great.
Well, and my first thought when you said that was this was originally written for a different actress, who I don't know how well she sings. So I just figured that once Madeline Kahn went into that slot, they had somebody who was an accomplished, trained singer who could sing, and so they just said, sing something.
Well, that's just the cool thing about learning about Madeline Kahn, because I had no idea she was an operatic-trained singer and could have very easily had that as her entire career had she not gravitated toward comedy and film comedy. She had to actually learn how to sing poorly in Blazing Saddles.
Oh, wow.
She's an accomplished singer, and you sense it here. She knows how to belt out the notes and do it well, and we'll hear that later as well in the movie. She's a very, very good singer, and I love how she's so into singing this song and brushing her hair, and she even does a little she's like performing it for herself.
And it's a weird way that she's brushing her hair, too. It's like she's like jamming the brush in and flipping it out.
Well, she's really into this song and having a good time with it.
Yeah. Well, and I think she's just into her. I think whatever it is she's doing, she's just into that.
Well, it starts off in just the way she delivers the song. If you watch, it's like it's building and building with each of her brush strokes, almost like you can sense it, the choir building and building behind her or something. Because she almost starts off kind of soft, but she's almost starting to get bottom out her voice by then when she's like, and I can't sing for anything, so I'm not even going to try it, but she's really, really getting into it before we end this minute. And to the point where each brush stroke becomes almost like the beat of a drum.
Yeah, and it's funny that she's going to that much trouble right before she goes to bed.
Okay, well, but isn't that the thing? Wasn't that the thing for a long time? Ladies had to brush their hair every night.
Yeah.
Don't you remember guys getting brushed off? My mom used to tell me in the 50s, I can't tonight. I have to wash and brush my hair.
Really? Wow.
You never heard that?
Mm-mm.
About having to brush. I can't go out tonight. I have to brush my hair.
Oh, no, I have heard that one. I've never been able to use that one, but I
think we're missing something big here, too, though. I feel like the lyrics she's singing prefigure what's about to happen in the next minute, because she says he has loosed the fateful lightning of his terrible swift sword.
That's true.
And I think everything that all of those lyrics are exactly describing what has happened and what is about to happen.
Yeah.
That is interesting. It was not by accident
that
they used that song.
Yeah.
There is something to say about the lyrics, and not only the background, apparently, with the John Brown retelling that adds really to why she would choose this. I like how just militant she is, and the fact that this sounds like a march, because that's what it is, and because it is a hymn, and she's like performing for herself in the mirror, it completely encapsulates she is calling all the shots, she's in charge, it's like she's marching to her own drum, nobody's going to tell her what else to do, which is going to be the nice irony, because here she is singing this song about how she's in charge, like it's her battle hymn. It's my fight to take to everybody. I'm the one who's going to, be responsible for the win. And yet things are going to twist on her here in just a little bit. So all of it plays into this nicely. And who knew before today?
And I don't even know what's coming up. I'm watching it minute by minute.
Minute by minute. I had heard this thing, and I hadn't looked it up, but somebody had posted that women are not supposed to wash their hair every day, that it's bad for their hair.
Too. Yeah,
and so that would be the excuse that you would maybe have hair washing day, and you'd go 3, 4, 5 days, and then by the time you wash it, you would need time to detangle and brush, and it would take a while, so you couldn't go out late at night with your beau because you had to wash your hair and brush it.
Huh, so maybe I wasn't getting brushed off as often as I thought I was.
Maybe that's where the phrase getting brushed off comes from.
I bet it is. Yeah, I bet it is.
I wouldn't be surprised. Etymology of being brushed off.
See, we're here for educational purposes.
See, and here we got all ticked off, and it was totally right. This is what happens. I would not be surprised if all of a sudden, when we look back, when you get brushed off, it's because I can't go out tonight. I have to brush my hair.
I like that.
All right. So she's in front of the mirror here. She's got a great... Whoa, where'd that come from? Let's go back. I love when I'm on a computer at the same time I'm recording to that same computer. She's in front of a typical nightstand, but before we got to that scene, we do have a wipe, and we get this lumbering shadow down the cobblestones. And Walt, remember we talked about that there was supposed to be a scene very similar to that that got dropped, where there was going to be a joke about him lumbering up the street, and it turned out that it was going to be like a 6-year-old kid missing or looking for his sister or something. So I'm wondering if this shot is supposed to be reflective of that for just a minute. I mean, it's obviously him, but it's like... I'm glad they got rid of the other stuff from the script, because then this would have been the third lumbering shot we would have seen.
Yeah, you're right. And they don't have too many scenes that are repetitive in here. So I guess they really did kind of set the scene and then keep moving instead of having a long scene of him walking around.
The question I've got, though, because they chose to insert this one little moment, and I guess it's supposed to help fill in the fact that he's going somewhere.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's in the cobblestone or brickstone streets of Transylvania.
So remember when the cars pull in to the front of the building, And they had the dart game and everything. As the cars pull up, there's cobblestone right out front.
Do you think this is the front door of the castle that he's walking up? Like this is the patio area, that back drive?
Well, I just kind of assumed that there's probably cobblestone around the building because they've got doors on the sides and things like that. So I would assume that most of those walkways are cobblestone. Guess I just haven't really thought about it that much.
Well, see, for me, and until you said that, which you're right. I mean, there is a stoned, like rock kind of, this kind of brick, whatever, driveway for the Frankenstein Manor when we came up and saw the door and everything. I just thought this was in the streets of Transylvania. So I was going to pull a Jerry for a second and say, where are all the townspeople? Just a few minutes ago, they're having a riot, and here comes Frankenstein. Here I am, late for the town hall.
With these townspeople, they probably ran to the wrong town.
They just ran right past him.
They're following a guy with an eye patch and a monocle. So you tell me.
Hey, I could almost see. Isn't that the shut up, we're going to the castle? But I swear he's right. Shut up. We march forward. Like, okay. Yeah. And then he's walking, because I thought these were like empty streets of Transylvania. So my thought was, because I realized they're shooting some of the stuff out of order, or they're re-editing out of order. I was like, well, where are all the townspeople? Because they were just running down these same streets to head to the castle. So you would think they would have run into Frankenstein or his monster at this point. But
unless they all ran past him.
That's what I'm thinking.
They may have.
Yeah. So if it is, let's play that. If it is the drive, though, if it is the front area, how is he planning to get inside?
Well, and that is a good question, because I was also thinking about this, that I don't think her bedroom's on the first floor. I think all the bedrooms are up the creepy staircase with no handrails.
The treacherous?
Yeah, the treacherous stairs. So, when he comes to the window, I don't think he just walked up to the side of the building.
I know. You're playing into tomorrow.
We're going to assume that he comes to the window.
But no, that's why I want to plant this seed. If he, let's say this is the castle. Let's say this is the front door. What's his plan? The last time he left, he did Hulk smash and came out of some side door and ran away. So I don't know if it was because he left somehow, not through the front door. He left through some weird side door that we had never seen before.
Right.
So is his plan to go back and hope the door's still down?
Or is he just lurking around?
And if that's the case, he's got to go all the way back through the castle and try to find anybody. And why? I'm lost here. I can't figure out why we're seeing the lumbering shadow to begin with.
Unless he's just like, it's like a homing beacon. Like her singing he's going to be able to find her that way.
But we don't hear her. But we don't hear her singing in this moment when we're seeing the wipe.
That's true.
I mean, we kind of automatically in our heads fill it in, because as soon as it wipes, it's not a very long, it's 3 or 4 seconds here, and then it wipes again, showing her in her room singing. And maybe that's the bridge we're supposed to make, that he's drawn to it.
Well, and it's funny you said that, Pete, because if you think about it, he shows up at the blind man's cabin, and the guy's got a record playing. He shows up with the girl at the well, and she's singing that annoying song about throwing flower petals into the water. So he does kind of show up with music going on. So I wonder if he is just kind of drawn to music.
You're right. Every single time he manages, without killing somebody right away,
right,
as if there's already some melody taking place that sort of entrances him. And not the lullaby that puts him into some stupor, but he seems to be at least pleasant around music playing.
Yeah, it's soothing.
Yeah. That's a good catch.
And the original John Brown's body was kind of a way of summoning the dead. So that's kind of literally what she's doing.
That's interesting.
Wow. This just got deep.
I should have paid more attention to that song.
Hey, this water's cold. Deep, too.
We really need Mel on here to get his insight on this.
We've been trying to get in touch with Mel Brooks to get in here and maybe join us for a podcast, but he seems to be very busy. He's got a musical on stage. Did you see he's going to be doing a thing in London, a meet and greet? They're going to play Blazing Saddles, and he's going to be at the audience to take questions. Age 92, amazing. And he's still doing this kind of stuff.
Absolutely amazing.
That's cool. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
It's a little off topic, but all right. Well, because I just wanted to talk about this lumbering thing for a moment. I just know it's a scary kind of looking shot. We only see the bottom of his feet, and all of a sudden we're cutting to Elizabeth singing. At this point, we can infer she's been singing for a few minutes, or at least a minute or so, because she's not at the very beginning of the lyrics. I guess at this point, she, again, I'm just going to recap this. She is certainly getting into this idea that she's performing. It's almost like she's using her hair as the orchestra. She's conducting, she's beating the drums, she's pulling the strings. strings. I mean, it just feels like she's in total performance mode for herself.
Yeah, and she's got to feel good. She's back in control of her significant relationship. She's in the huge castle that will soon be partly hers. And
oh yeah, let's not forget that this is the inheritance, and she's coming to check it out. And I mean, even though she's obviously got money, she is marrying this guy for some reason. Obviously not for anything physical, but it must be about his station. This goes back to what we were talking about even yesterday. I really truly believe he's a figure piece for her. He's just another bauble in her chest of jewels.
The further we go along, the more I agree with you.
Good. I didn't even think about it. Is he titled?
He's been called Baron.
They call him the Baron. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that would clear up a lot.
In fact, and he's a doctor.
He's a renowned surgeon and now a baron and owner of a castle. How cool would it be to own a castle?
That would be awesome.
I wouldn't like the heating bill, but
no. Well, it doesn't seem like there's much of one here. They just open windows and let the wind blow through.
Let it blow through. As we begin to wrap up then, I guess, this minute, because it is going to carry on, we need to find out, does she finish her song? Who she's singing to? Is there maybe somebody in the room? We didn't even think about that. Maybe there's somebody behind her and she's performing. But for now, minute number 92. Pete, do you have anything that we did not cover for this minute?
No, I think I'm good.
Well,
there's one thing I caught, and I forgot to mention it earlier. When they do actually kiss, it isn't a like a warm romantic kiss. She jumps back and giggles, and it's kind of almost the same feel as when he threw her the kiss on the train platform, and she did that weird laugh and
well, first she ducked after that one.
Yeah, right, and it almost knocked her over, and so she has a very weird. This is just a very weird relationship. She's a very odd person.
The style of kiss, you can see he's not really happy. In fact, he doesn't even reciprocate. She at least pops. So she's like, but almost like a parent to a child or something, or to almost like a pity kiss or something. Oh, you're so cute. Nah. You know, it's not a real kiss.
No, it's not.
And he doesn't even, he just keeps his lips together. Like they never even move after they press together.
Yeah, and you do get the feeling, I get the feeling that he's had it. Like he's coming to the end of his rope with her.
That could be why they had that scene that they chose to cut out, with him deciding, you know what, it's time for an intellectual discussion with Inga.
Yeah, this is going a different direction.
At least she's willing.
Yeah.
To talk.
Yeah.
To talk. To have a meaningful intellectual relationship.
Remember, it's not physical. It's just intellectual.
No, it is not physical.
Gotta love a guy who can figure a way to justify himself onto a woman.
Yes.
All right. Well, as we wrap this up, then tomorrow we want to get back at this and find out what's going on with the song. Before we tease what's coming up, Pete, how can people learn a little bit more about where to hear your voice and insights on things not necessarily Frankenstein related, but certainly from stories that come out of the mid to late 30s?
Well, I'm part of a podcast called the Indiana Jones Minute, where we do pretty much exactly what you guys do here, but with the Indiana Jones movies. And you can find us at indianajonesminute.com.
And let me tell you, folks, I got all caught up with these guys. In fact, it's kind of cool how social media works. I mean, this is where the good of social media comes from, because I'd find myself listening to the podcast while kayaking or woodworking or painting or doing some yard work. And all of a sudden something would come up and I'd be like, oh, I've got to tell them why. And then it's like, no, this isn't live radio. This was recorded like 2 years ago, you idiot. And I would still go ahead and text anyway.
Oh, I love that.
But it's been cool because you guys have really helped give us some pointers on how to start off the podcast ourselves. You answered some questions for me, and every now and then we find ourselves just chatting on Messenger. So I appreciate how open you guys were to helping us and being there to converse as we've evolved with our own show.
Oh yeah, I've really enjoyed that. I hope we haven't steered you too far wrong.
Nah, in fact, what I find so funny right now is how much I still love the Indiana Jones movies, and yet the fact that you guys can pick them apart to the point you would think you hate them, and I know you don't. I know you really don't.
Yeah.
So, Walt, what about you? Where can people learn about us?
Well, there are all kinds of places where you can go to learn about us. We mentioned yesterday our Facebook places, but one other great place is Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/thewilderride, there's some opportunities to help out with the show. There are some expenses that we are incurring that we would love for you to consider helping out with. Even if it's just $1 a month, that's going to help and would sure be an encouragement to us. But also there's some other levels there. You can become an assistant I've got every word except the right
Associate
one.
producer.
Associate producer. Good Lord.
Well, you can be all different levels, but we have one right now.
Yes, that's right. And we would love for y'all to consider that as well. We're going to try to start some discussions going there a little bit too. So check out patreon.com/thewilderride and see if that's something you might be interested in.
In fact, I can tell you for a fact, coming up pretty soon, we'll have a free bonus episode we'll put there. We had a chance to interview a biographer of Gene Wilder, Funny and Sad. So we're going to have that interview with him coming up shortly on our Patreon page. We'll make it a freebie to kind of entice you to see what you get over there. And who knows what other movies we might discuss in different lengths other than, 1 minute at a time.
Well, and that is a good interview. I learned a lot talking to him that I didn't know about Gene Wilder and confirmed some things that we had read and heard other places, but it's a very good interview. I'm looking forward to hearing that again.
Yeah, folks, that's the book by Brian Scott Mednick, and hopefully if you if you're a member of our Wilder Ride listening group, he has actually joined our listeners group and has even weighed in on a few things. So it's kind of cool to have somebody who made it his life's work, or at least initially first part of his life's work, to spend 15 years on a biography and put it out. Gene Wilder, Funny and Sad. That'll be coming out soon. Come on back tomorrow. We want you guys to continue with this. And Pete, we get you tomorrow, don't we? We got you on your schedule? Yeah. Okay, so we'll have Pete still tomorrow from the Indiana Jones Minute, where we're going to start with She's Still Singing the Battle Hymn of the Republic. We'll have Frankenstein's monster come to the window with a full moon out, and we will end with Elizabeth with a brand new hairstyle for some reason, saying, "Where am I?" and then screams at the monster. And that's all coming up on Hump Day tomorrow on this, The Wilder Ride. No tongues.
No tongues.
I'm the one who died. Won't
Elizabeth.
Tramp. You too tonic tramp.